Hi, Ola. Hi. We're so delighted to have you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Perfect, Ola. Tell us a bit about your background. Who are you?
So I'm right now a 44-year-old man from Sweden. No, joking aside, I have a background as I would say, a curious person. And when I was young, I didn't really know what to do. So I decided to pursue the path of most resistance. So I decided to go to Lund, study engineering physics, because it was supposedly the hardest thing to study. So I did that, and then I made a lot of friends, like-minded people. Going from, I grew up in Jämla, outside of Växjö. Didn't have many friends with the same mindset as I did. Went to Lund, met a lot of people with the same mindset, started working in the tech industry, and after a while realized that I probably needed to start something of my own. And by chance, I ended up in a company in Denmark, which promptly, about 2 weeks after I came there, went bankrupt. They had a lot of interesting ideas, and they connected me to a community that was also very interesting, which had to do with user interfaces. So starting there in the ashes of that Danish company, me together with a friend that I met at university, we started up FlatFrog. And now this was 2006, so it's 15 years ago. It's been a long and interesting journey, but we're now, FlatFrog is present in the US, Sweden, Korea, China, Taiwan, and we're about 100 people. And we're not a very well-known company, I would say, especially in Sweden, but in our industry we almost have 80% market share. And with the pandemic that has happened now, FlatFrog has done another pivot. So we're now, since about a year back, a hybrid work company. It's kind of working on how to work better post-pandemic. So that's me, I guess.
Perfect. So you got the entrepreneurial bug at the Lund University, and it wasn't already in your family. You didn't really catch it from your parents.
I think I got the bug when I right before I graduated was headhunted to a startup that was just riding the IT boom of 2000. So I went into this company, Anoto. Unfortunately, they are no more in Sweden. But I went in there. There were, the sky was the limit. And in my first week, I was sent off to the US with a 500,000 SEK budget to teach myself stuff so we could accelerate things faster. And then, of course, the IT bubble burst. That was also an interesting experience, but it taught me a lot about what to do in the early stages and how to have a grand vision of things, which I think helped me a lot when starting up FlatFrog, and especially when we went after the big investors for FlatFrog. So FlatFrog has in total raised about, I think it's about 700 million crowns in different investment rounds. The biggest one was when we got an investment from Intel, which was a very interesting experience, dealing with such a big company, doing investment into at that time, relatively small company of we were about 40 people at the time.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So we're going to talk a lot about investment and about FlatFrog, but if we just begin a little bit with your what you just described. Your journey has been quite up and down, with the company going bankrupt and then you going to US with all that money. What would you consider to be your key milestones, or the things that you've learned the most from, that you'd like to share here with this community?
Yeah, I think as I said, my early days going out of university and going into a startup, that was a very good experience to actually have worked in a startup before doing a startup. I don't think I would have done a startup and I know I wouldn't, because the angel investor and the co-founder of FlatFrog, Christopher Eus, was the founder of that company. So I also made all the connections I needed to be able to take that next step. Then we've had, I think, also being naturally curious. I got the idea for FlatFrog watching a TED Talk in 2006, about a year before the iPhone came out. There was this guy called Jeff Hahn, who had a great TED Talk about the future of user interfaces. You should take a look at it. It's quite ahead of its time. And about 2 years later, I got to meet him, and we discussed a lot about these things. And his company got acquired by Microsoft. So I think that as well, kind of, I'm not sure if it was a turning point, but it was definitely when I realized that I knew I could contribute to something, because essentially watching that video, I thought he had amazing ideas, but his hardware was pretty crap. And I knew that I can definitely be part of making that better. And then we've had a number of times during FlatFrog where we pivoted, which I think is a key for many startups. You kind of go into one direction, but the biggest advantage you have compared to a large company is that you can easily change direction. And you have to know when to change direction, so that you don't waste all your resources, but still don't keep running in the wrong direction for too long. And then the final item is, of course, which anyone who's doing a startup will tell you, is you need a great team. And the two first people I recruited were my best friends from university, because I knew that with them on my side, it was impossible to fail. So should also always try to surround yourself with people that are smarter than yourself, or at least in a lot of areas are smarter than yourself, that can complement and make this great team that the investors will want to invest in.
Perfect. So flexibility is probably the key word in everything that you have achieved so far. Finding the right point when to change directions, and also finding the right kind of people. So Ola, what do you look in a person when you think about building a team? What is it that's the most important to you?
So it depends. For me, since even though I've done the whole academic journey, I'm not a specialist. So I need to surround myself with specialists who are really, really, really good at what they're doing. And also one thing that I've learned over time is how difficult it is to find and close investments. So I have a natural talent for explaining technology and kind of seeing the bigger picture of technology and getting to the right track. But having that person who's really the financial guy is key for me. But another person, which might be the financial guy, would definitely need someone like me with a grand vision and a natural way of knowing how to get to the vision. So
Yeah, so it would be ideal to have specialists in the field to come and join you. But in the beginning, when the startup is really new, and how do you attract specialists to your team?
Yeah. So the way we did it, which was so I've done three different startups, but for FlatFrog, we did take in a small angel investment, so we could actually pay the specialist a decent wage, even though they also got stock options and shares. They could kind of live off of it. And also, I would say it's an advantage to hire people who are not too settled. And I actually see one question here in the chat from Linda. Hiring young people that are not so set in their ways and not caught in the hamster wheel is really good, because they have a tendency and a willingness to take bigger risk and willingness to work for rather for a stake in the company than for something that to pay off their mortgage. So, but you can also, so you need you need to get those people to believe in your vision. Otherwise, they won't be willing to work for less than they would be paid at a large company. But also from, and I think key for an entrepreneur startup person is to know the difference between a person who is passionate about their job compared to someone who just has a job to pay the bills. It's a difference, and you shouldn't have the pay your bills people early in a startup, because they are not the ones that will wake up at night and wonder why they didn't solve the problem during the day. So you need to get the feeling for who those people are, and once you kind of see that type of person, and then you will know that it's the right person. And those are as present between specialists as entrepreneurs. It's just a mentality. And these two guys who joined me at the start, they're still with the company. And even now that they're 15 years older, they still have the same mentality. They fix problems in the middle of the night if they have to, because that's who they are, and that's not going to change just because they got older. So you will have young people with that mindset, and you will have old people with that mindset, just needing to solve the problem.
Yeah. So the passion has to be there, and also the hunger. One has to be hungry at whatever age.
So,
we have a question.
I'll answer another question from Naimul here.
Yes, please go on.
So I'm not saying that it's impossible to start at later stage in life, but there's a reason why successful entrepreneurs typically have some kind of financial independence or stability, and can afford to fail. Then of course this is typically easier when you're young. And there's a reason why a lot of the successful startups are done by younger people, because you are more flexible. If you have to move to a different city or a different country to do it, it's not a big deal. If I today were to uproot my entire family and move to another country, it's a much bigger thing. And I would definitely, but on the other hand, since I've done a successful startup already, it's much easier to have a bigger seed investment to be able to get those people who actually need to get paid. And while I'm at it, Linda has a question here as well. I definitely encourage young people to go into startups instead of a regular job, because it's something that is this 9 out of 10 startups fail, and I've personally been in 2 failed startups. An auto which failed in a much slower way, but they still failed in the end, and then Tactio, the Danish company, which kind of burnt out very fast, and it was very good experience for me as a young person to go into those, and I definitely wouldn't have been where I was if I hadn't been in the failed startups.
Yeah. So failure should be taken as a push to move forward.
Yeah, and you as a young person, when you're not the founder of the company, if you can afford the company to fail, then just go in and get the experience. Of course, you shouldn't be working for nothing. You should still get a stake in the company if they succeed. But it's not the end of the world if you don't have to sell your house if the company fails, and that's much easier when you're young.
Perfect. So over the years, Ola, you have gone into several different ventures. What attracts you to a particular venture?
That it's interesting to think about. That's if I can take something and kind of build on the idea and see the grand vision at the end. If I can't see that this can scale to something very big, it's not interesting. And I have an experience that there are people who can see the grand visions, and there are people who don't. And if you personally don't have the ability to see that and still want to do a startup, you need to find that partner that does. And the same way for me, it's really good for me to have someone who is more on the financial side, who can really work the networks and close the deals and do the selling part that I'm not as interested in.
Interesting that we talk about having the right kind of people. So what would you suggest, or in your opinion, what are the right networks available for a person who wants to start and is looking for the right kind of people? What kind of networking should they do?
Well, you can do a lot of networking, but the best networking is to work with someone. It's very easy to get fooled by people who are good at selling themselves. But unless you've actually done something with them, done a project, you don't know them. It's not until you're approaching that deadline, doing that thing, that their true nature will show. So you need to experience that firsthand. So do something with them. Go into lots of different things. And again, university, if you're there, is a good place. Anyone who's done a team project will know that there are different types of people, and there are people that you will want to do that with again. And if you find that person that you really want to work with again, then you probably found a good match for you. The same thing goes for working in a company. So the startups that I worked in, I knew immediately which the people were that I would want to go. Even if we failed, I still wanted to work with those people because those were the ones that made a difference.
Brilliant. Then we have a question for you, Ola, from Sven. How would you rate the importance of idea versus execution? Which is more important in your experience?
So in my experience, idea is about 5% and execution is 95%. I think it's around there. It might be 90-10. It might be 2-98, but it's in that range. There are great ideas every day. I've had a number of great ideas that could turn into something. Other people have also had those ideas. As an interesting thing for FlatFrog, there were literally 7 people that almost at the same time as me had the same idea. And 4 of them turned into other startups that are now gone. And we executed better. And I think you will find that in basically any situation. It's like when society and technology reaches a certain stage, it's just natural that the same idea pops up all over the place. So it's the person who does the best execution that wins.
Beautifully said. How would you differentiate an idea from innovation?
Idea from innovation.
Yeah, like you said, there are so many ideas popping up all the time.
So
People have the same ideas.
An idea is something that strikes you in the shower or when you're sleeping, or innovation is what happens when you work with it. It's when you solve the actual problems that turn up that you never can figure out on your own without getting your hands dirty.
So you work with the idea and you turn it into an innovation by getting your hands dirty.
Yeah. And a follow-up question from Sven here: idea person versus if you're an idea person, should you look for someone with good execution? And I think that if you're a pure idea person, then you're probably not a good startup person. You have to be able to execute. Otherwise, you should probably you are not the entrepreneur. You can work in a startup and do great things on the CTO side, but if you don't have that willingness to execute, I don't think you will succeed with a startup. It's you need to at least want to bring everything to 80% completion on your own. If you're only in the first 5 to 10% and leaving everything else to someone else, you're not really an entrepreneur. And I think reading any of the books of the great entrepreneurs, it's the same thing. They are part execution people, even if they are the idea person.
It has to be.
Yeah, you have to have part of it. And if you have the self-insight that you're only an idea person, then you should find a way to apply that. And yeah, maybe you can find someone who's a great executor and just feed ideas to them. But yeah, in my opinion, then you're probably not an entrepreneur.
Then you probably need to have a team that fills in the gaps.
Yeah.
Perfect. Tell us a bit about FlatFrog, Ola. What are the services, products? What are you guys doing?
So FlatFrog started out with trying to solve multi-touch for large displays. So again, this was before the iPhone, and we wanted to do multi-touch on TVs and larger stuff. And then the iPhone came out, and everything kind of exploded. And this is the reason why we got the Intel investment back in 2012, because Intel basically, after the launch of the iPad, they realized, okay, we have to have touch on everything. So we developed touch solutions for quite a while. And I would say that we completely fulfilled Intel's request to bring down the cost of touch in laptops and iPads and phones to a very low level. Unfortunately, that didn't help FlatFrog much, because it was mostly Chinese subsidized companies that took most of the revenue. And then we pivoted in 2015 and went to large displays and to corporate ideation. And that's where we've been since. And we, as I said before, we have about, it's a little bit how you calculate, between 50 and 80% market share in corporate interactive displays. And we are, our main customers are brands like Samsung, Dell, Sharp, Ricoh, NEC, Panasonic, and a number of the Chinese companies that no one outside of China knows. So we are basically doing the large interactive systems for these companies. And then, as I said, we did our second pivot at the beginning of the pandemic, and are now focusing hard on hybrid work. So hybrid work is what we and a lot of people around us think will happen after the pandemic is over. People have realized that a lot of the work can be done from home. There's been these, if you look into the Silicon Valley companies, Facebook, Apple, Google, a lot of them have new ways of working and new, you can spend this much time in the office and this much time at home. This also means that people will be in the office and at home at the same time. And to a much larger degree, you will have people in the office wanting to collaborate with people outside of the office. So what FlatFrog is essentially doing is turning old non-interactive conference rooms into the modern world. So I can just quickly share some pictures here and talk about. Let's see. I think I should be able to see what I'm sharing now. So in the kind of old conference room, you would have a whiteboard or some kind of flip chart, and people would sit around and brainstorm and things like that. In the analog to digital transformation that's happening now, kind of that old analog device is then digitalized and cloud connected. So you can have multiple people. You have a certain part of the people being in the room, but then you have a number of people that's working from home at the same time, and of course they want to work on the same material. This means that you need a solution. FlatFrog has installed some, I think it's about 700,000-800,000 of these interactive systems in conference rooms all over the world. I can make this a little larger since.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and now we're kind of we've connected these with a piece of software as well. So now you can have what's called the FlatFrog board, which works on these interactive devices in the room or the conference room, but it also works on your laptop in your home. And we've also made it so it works without the conference room if people happen to be working only from home that day. And it's also time zones. A lot more people are working around the clock. FlatFrog, for example, we have the day starts in the Asian offices, and then we continue in the European office, and then the day ends up in the US office, and we can continue working on the same thing because everything is in the cloud. And essentially, we're placing all of our whiteboards in the cloud. So we've let's see if I can flip this. So we have a number of companies that are now working with us and starting to work in this way. Big companies like Pepsi and Exxon and Siemens, etc. That have especially when you're multi-site, you have a lot of people that's now after the pandemic working from home. You can easily go in and kind of use that same whiteboard no matter where you are. And it's a freemium model, so you essentially just go into flatfrog.com, start using the board. You get a number of boards that you can use for free, and then if you want to use it in the conference room, or if you want to have hundreds of boards, then you start paying a monthly fee, like a SaaS model. And this is something that we see is happening, and it's happening quite fast. So there's and of course we're not alone in this space, but we think most of the other competitors like Miro and Mural are pure laptop based, so everyone's on the laptop. FlatFrog is a company that is also including the conference room in the space, so you can have both people being fully productive in a brainstorm in conference room combined with people in another site or another place. Naimul posed a question here that I can answer at the same time. Are we looking at like hardware and software combined? I would say yes, that's one of our biggest advantages. We have the full stack. We do the hardware, but we also do the software, which means that we can do the entire experience. Then it might not be branded FlatFrog, but there will definitely be these like type white label products that someone else will put their name on to make like the ultimate digital whiteboard experience. And I'm hoping that FlatFrog can show some very interesting things coming out here in the near future. And by the way, the tablets, any tablet is of course usable here already. So you can take an iPad or a Kindle and whatever, and it works perfectly seamless with your interactive large display or your laptop. So anything that you can do on the large display, you can also do on a tablet.
Perfect. And with COVID-19, now that we're all going in a completely different direction, what do you see the future of FlatFrog, or how do you think what is going to be the new normal after the pandemic is over?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. Everyone wants to know that. So it's going to be different. It's definitely going to be different. And we see that as an example. I think a really interesting thing is this prices of houses in Växjö going up by 25% because people want a house instead of a flat when you can work from home. And that's going to be happening all over the world. That people realize that I don't need to have a 2-hour commute. I can do that once or twice a week to get into the office to meet everyone. But I can move half an hour further away, pay less money for a bigger house.
I absolutely, we'll come to the question first, but just taking on from where you left, I absolutely love your lake house and the way you live so far away from Lund, yet you're living right in the heart of the action while living in Lampholt on the countryside. Which I find fascinating. How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's not that difficult, actually. So I think my work, even though we have a Lund office, I spend most of my time dealing with Asia and US. So it's the distance from Småland to Hong Kong is about the same as Lund to Hong Kong. Doesn't really matter. Same time zone. So since I spend most of my time there anyway, being hybrid, both were being in the office and remote, was already kind of natural for me. And the main reason to go into the office was to meet people face to face, because you still need them. Because you get a different, deeper connection when you're face to face with someone. But you don't need it 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week. You need those 2-3 hour sessions a couple of times a week, and then you can go work. And that works perfectly with having a longer commute. And for me, just like this lunch, I had a like 7-hour work before lunch today because we have some issues in Asia. But after having lunch, I just went out and took a swim in the lake. And that kind of reset everything completely. And I think that post-pandemic, more people will want to do this because your proximity to your workplace is not going to be as important anymore.
Yeah, and particularly for people like you who are in so many different spaces at the same time in entrepreneurship, patents, technology, trend spotting. There's so many things that you're doing. So it's possible to do them now with even post-COVID, now that the world is going in that direction. Go on.
I'm just going to answer the question from Sven here, the target audience for the product. It's so compared to Miro, I agree. Miro is very popular with startups. It's a great mind mapping and brainstorming tool. We are focusing on anyone who likes to use a whiteboard, physical whiteboarding. anyone who likes to stand up and discuss around the whiteboard, that's the target audience for us. It's the person who always to stand 2-3 people up at the whiteboard at the same time, and possibly in multiple places, and has that naturally. So we built the whole software around being a digital whiteboard. Miro is not a digital whiteboard. They call themselves a digital whiteboard, but it's not really a whiteboard because it's an infinite canvas. You can fit in as much as you want. You can get in a lot of stuff, but it's not really a whiteboard as such. So to answer the question, anyone who likes to use whiteboard, who likes the whiteboarding or the paper format, that's who we're targeting.
Perfect. I think that answers your question, Sven. So, Ola, if we talk about startups, how do you take an idea and turn it into a startup? What are the most important skills that you think are required for someone to convert an idea into a startup?
Yeah, the first thing I know it's a bit of a cliche, but unless you have an elevator pitch, you might as well shut down immediately. You need to be able to instantly tell someone why your company is great. And if you don't have that, then you should practice, because that's how you're going to get that first seed investment. You need to meet a lot of people, and you need to get them hooked quickly. So I would say that's the first thing. You need to work on your pitch deck, and kind of explain why would anyone, because it's all about getting the money into the company somehow. Of course, there are people who work from nothing and up, like Minecraft, because they could do it on his own. But most startups are not like that. So you need to quickly be able to explain why someone would put their money into your company.
How much of your idea can you then tell or pitch to the person while protecting it?
Yeah, just the right amount. It's
a fine line.
Yeah, it's a very fine line, and I'm sure I've made the mistake more than once to overshare, and it's something that you learn over time, where you stop sharing, and also it's kind of, you need to keep some part of the mystique there. You shouldn't tell them everything, because if you tell them how crappy your part of this system is, they will never want to invest. But you need to know that that crappy part is just time and money to fix it, because if they then go in and do a due diligence, they will figure out that, okay, if you don't have that part at all, then you're screwed. So you need to polish your nice stuff and push away a little bit of the bad stuff, but make sure that that bad stuff doesn't come back to haunt you later.
Brilliant. You hold several patents. Do you still find it challenging to go through the process of patenting?
I think the key to patenting is finding a good patent attorney, because I think I hold about 35 patents, something, and generating the idea and iterating the first idea is always exciting. Writing a patent is a work for patent attorneys, and if you don't find the right one who can balance the drafting process to what you're protecting, first you're going to run out of money, and secondly it's going to be really boring, because patent attorneys are expensive, and you need to find someone who isn't in it to bill you. And all of the big firms just want to bill you as much as they can. They have no interest in protecting your ideas. They will tell you how much they want to protect your ideas, but it really only law firms that want maximum billing hours. There are a multitude of smaller patent attorneys that are doing it to get your business later on, and that's who you should find in a startup, unless you have unlimited money. then you can go for one of the big firms.
Yeah, and once you find someone good, then you hold on to them.
Yeah. So, and I've used 2 people throughout the FlatFrog. Of course, we have more patent attorneys working, but there's 2 connected people, patent attorneys who are really interested in getting that startup thing. And if you want contacts, I'll be happy to share them with you. They're great people, both of them. They're not cheap, but they have your best interest in mind and not just the billable hours.
Perfect. So anyone from our audience here, if anyone would like to, if you have any more questions about them, so they can ask you directly.
This is from Linda on patents. It depends on what startup you are. If you're a pure software startup, it's not at all necessary to have patents, because most of the things that you'll be doing are probably very difficult to patent. And secondly, someone else has surely tried to do it already. If you're doing anything in hardware, it's essential that you patent, because you will be copied faster than you can think. So it really depends. And then, of course, there's a fine line between software and hardware. So if you're very hardware focused, patenting is necessary. If you're software focused, you should probably consider not doing it and just hiding as much as you can your know-how.
Brilliant. So let's see if we have any other questions about patenting. Guys, you can keep writing in the chat function if there's anything else you'd like to know about patenting here. Ola, you're a published writer, another feather in your cap.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I've always liked writing, and I started writing travel excerpts from my travels in Asia, and people really liked it. And then I've been an avid science fiction fan for as long as I remember. So I started writing science fiction. And that was also interesting. Being published in Sweden when you're a science fiction writer is difficult, because there's no money in it at all. There's a reason why the 2 types of books that are released in Swedish are crime and feel good, because that's the 2 markets that are big enough to support publishing houses.
Okay.
Also, an interesting fact with books is that 98% of all books that are published sell fewer than 5,000 copies. And you can easily do the return on investment on 5,000 copies, and as an author, you make about 10 crowns per book. So you can figure out how much money you get, and how much money you need to make a living. But the interesting part is that it's exactly the same thing as a startup. You have to have a product market fit. And me personally, I didn't. So I had to go to a small publisher that published it because they really liked the book. And they're never going to make any money on it. But if you have a good product market fit, if you, for example, you're a crime that focuses on Småland, which no one has done that much, then you should go to and you happen to be a good writer, then you should go to the big public houses, because they can actually make money out of it. Then, of course, my personal vision step is that I know that the international sci-fi market is big. So down the line, when I'm done with my series of books in Swedish, I'll of course have them translated into English, because the science fiction market outside of Sweden is roughly 100,000 times bigger than the Swedish science fiction market. So there you can already you can easily do the return on investment and see that. Then you only have to sell the equivalent of 1 or 2 books in Sweden if you're going and finding the right market outside. Of course, it's a much bigger market with more competitors, but as long as you have a good product market fit on your book, then it will still be interesting. And then, of course, it's about 98% luck as well. You need to hit the timing perfectly. When there's some interest, someone picks it up, and it goes viral. So,
wow, it's a whole process.
it's
a whole journey.
And it's also very, very similar to doing a startup. It's about your contacts. It's about your networks, what friends you have, what they're working with, who you know, how well you know the business.
And how you market your book.
Yeah, and there are so many people who write books. Most of them are good, but a lot of them are really good writers, and they will never be published because they don't have the right connections and they don't have the right product market fit. And then you can have people who are not very good writers, but still sell tons of books because they have the perfect product market fit. We have a certain crime novelist, Swedish crime novelist, who writes things in Fjällbacka. If you read the reviews of her books, you wouldn't expect them to sell so much, but people love them because it's exactly what the book buying population wants to have. So being an author is as much being a salesperson for yourself as anything else. And I'll immediately answer Naimul's question here. Yes, digital is definitely way to go. So I can put it like this: digital books and audiobooks is such a big part of the income for both publishers and independent authors. There's a certain amount that a person will pay for a book. So let's say that I'm selling an ebook for 50 crowns. And then of course there will be a share taken out from the distributor or the publisher, but you're still making like 40 crowns. If I'm selling that same physical copy, typically the publisher will make 7-8 crowns, because you have to print the book, you have to ship it, you have to store it, you have to send it over. It's only really big sellers that you can sell. So I think there's two really, really interesting things happening. Two sites. You probably know Kindle Direct Publishing, Amazon's way of self-publishing, which now larger authors are also picking up. And there's another site, Smashwords, which essentially takes all of the other publishers, and you only have to publish on Smashwords, and then you're on Apple Books, you're on Kobo, you're everywhere. And it takes about 5 minutes to publish a book if it's been properly formatted. And you get 70% of the revenues directly. So if you're looking at the authors who make the most money, a lot of them are now self-published, but they were already famous before. They kind of skipped the whole sales, because they know that even if they sell a fifth of the number of copies, they will still make 10 times as much money publishing ebooks.
Wow.
So yeah, really interesting digital wave of, and especially now that it's getting easier and easier to do audiobooks, which a lot of people like. And the streaming services for audiobooks is also a great recurring revenue for authors.
Yeah, it's like a whole seminar in itself. But what would you suggest to our first-time writers, or if someone would like to get into writing in Sweden?
So the first thing you need to do is to really like writing. If you don't like writing, so to put it like this, if you want to be an author in it for the money, just get out immediately. You really need to like to write, and you really need to like to talk about yourself and your book and everything. But writing is key. There's so many people writing now, so unless you're at least pretty decent writer, you won't have a chance. But then the advantage of writing is that it's probably the best thing you can do in the world. So just writing in itself, for me, it's therapy. It's completely. I don't have to care about return on investment on the project. I don't have to care about the deadline, the timeline. I can just sit down and write, and don't even have to care about the laws of physics because they don't apply in my writing. So it's really something that's therapeutic. And then you have I would say the real writers, the ones who are so passionate that they sit and write for weeks without eating, and those people should write, because without them we won't have Nobel Prize winning authors. And they're kind of bringing culture forward just as much as startup people are bringing technology and social networks forward.
Brilliant. So like it's not the same thing anymore that you just go sit in front of the sea, you look at the waves, and an idea comes and you write and it goes viral. You really have to work the process to get your.
I'm sure that happens if you're lucky enough, but no. Writing is also, again, 5% idea, 95% execution. It takes a long time to write a book, especially when you realize that you have to rewrite it about 5 times. It takes a really long time. So, and that idea you will have, again, if you're a writer, just like an entrepreneur, you will have multiple ideas. You just need to know which ones are good for you and also have a good product market fit.
Yeah, it's interesting how startups in writing they're so similar. And with platforms like Medium, you can actually use your writing to promote your product and your startup as well.
Exactly. And there's actually sites like Wattpad where you can publish chapter by chapter and get immediate feedback from readers. And there's so many readers that are willing to give aspiring authors feedback. And that's, of course, only in English. So it's much easier if you're doing it in English, because the digitalization of the world of books has not really happened in Swedish because the market is too small. There's no space for that type of company. The publishing houses have no interest in going there. And a market of 14 million Swedish speakers around the world, it's not big enough to warrant a whole network in its own.
Yeah, perfect. We just left with really short time. It's good that we have answered the questions as we went on. So, Ola, if you'd just like to wrap up everything by giving us your vision for the future as an entrepreneur, as a proud tech geek, so to say. What is your vision for FlatFrog or for the world?
So I'm really looking forward to the post-pandemic world. I think we're going to see some good changes. Hopefully, we will see a lot less unnecessary travel, a lot less commuting when it's not needed, and hopefully a lot better work-life balance for a lot of people. I think we're seeing it already now. People applying for jobs saying, "Yeah, I want to work 3 days a week from home. Otherwise, I won't take this job," and that's going to be common. And like, I want to work from this place. So you will definitely have people like, "Oh, I might move to Thailand and still work for this company." Okay, do that. Come to Sweden once a quarter. So I think, and also the pandemic has pushed the world into forced video conferencing and remote working much faster than everyone was expecting. And there's a reason why a company like Zoom, for example, just skyrocketed when suddenly everyone had to do video conferencing. And there's so much interesting innovation going on in improving the remote experience. I recommend you to look at the Google Project Starlight. They've basically done a booth which you walk into and sit opposite someone completely the other end of the world and see them in full 3D.
Wow.
It's a Google project, so it probably never end up in product because that's how Google does it. But someone else will do it, and it will be a great product. And then, of course, the VR, AR, XR is probably the most exciting thing that's going to happen in the next 10 years. VR is so close to being viable, virtual reality and augmented reality is I think we've passed the hype. We're in the trough of disillusionment, and it's coming up. And we'll have the first thing I think people will notice is when it comes into cars. Augmented reality in cars will make for hopefully better drivers and more informed choices about what to do things, less accidents, etc. I think that's the first thing where most people will actually see it. But then, of course, it will come into any type of put on a pair of glasses and go repair your car just by downloading the How to Repair Your Engine program. That's also something that I really look forward to.
It's exciting, yet a bit scary at the same time. But yeah, it's a whole new world of opportunities that's opening up very soon. Ola, thank you very much. The time is up. There are so many other things we could have discussed, and we'll probably have another session and talk about all the things that are left unsaid. But thank you so much for taking out the time and sharing your journey with us. We're truly honored to have you here today. Thank you very much for
Thank you, and thanks everyone for the good questions.
Perfect. Goodbye. And
Goodbye.
Thank you, our audiences, for being here and your questions. Bye-bye.